Unseen, unheard, unhealed. The crisis of connection and the power of listening. Have you ever felt like your soul was screaming for someone, just one person, to see you? Not just hear your words, but to really see the raw, authentic, vulnerable parts of who you are. I'm not talking about sex, so that's a different kind of undressing intimacy. I'm talking about someone who sees below the hidden surface of who you are, your secret dreams, your fears, the messiness that you don't dare say out loud. We're facing a crisis of connection where people feel more disconnected than ever, despite being more connected than ever. Studies show that active listening can reduce conflicts in relationships by 80%. Yet, most of us listen with only 25% efficiency, and we forget 75% of what we've heard within just a few days. So since 2001, I've done close to 30,000 hours of healing work, working with people in physical and emotional pain. To put that into perspective, it's 1,250 days, 179 weeks, 41 months, and 3.42 years of active listening. I've listened to their struggles, I've listened to their pain, I've seen their struggles, and I've witnessed how being present with them and active listening was transformative and healing in their journey. And as an author, speaker, coach, and a facilitator of healing, my greatest passion has been and continues to be sitting with someone and allowing them to be heard where they have greater clarity and peace in their purpose and their soul mission. My brand new marriage was getting a little rocky. Not because the love was gone, but because the active listening was. Have you ever felt that way in a relationship before? It's a very subtle shift that begins to happen over time. Unless deep awareness and presence is always there, it can happen to any of us. And it was beginning to happen to us. We just landed in Tijuana, Mexico. We were heading to Rosarito to visit some friends at the beach. And to be honest with you, it wasn't really the small disconnects, it wasn't really the big things that were disconnecting us. It was the small daily things, like where to put the meat in the refrigerator, the temperature of the air, where to go shopping, what restaurant to eat at. Slowly over time, somehow or another, we'd stopped being compassionately curious about each other. And frustrations began to build. And then resentment began to build. We're walking through the airport, and then I hear my partner say, "Jesse, I can't do this with you anymore." And in that moment, I hear these little voices in my head. They were saying, "See, I told you so. You're definitely not lovable. You're not good enough. You can't be in relationship." And then I hear this other voice say, "Jesse, do you want to keep being right, or do you want to be in a relationship?" And so I pulled my partner aside and I said, "Hey, can we find a place here, just somewhere quiet in the airport, and let's sit down and let's listen to each other until we experience and feel love between us again." And so with some effort we did. We found a quiet place at the airport, and we listened to each other. We listened to each other's frustrations. We laughed. We cried. We celebrated all the things that we do love about each other. And we promised to, or we committed to, listening to each other in a much deeper way, and not just to say the words, "I love you," but to deepen how we listen to each other and to never let those words, "I can't do this with you anymore," come between us. And to be honest with you, it was a real turning point in our relationship. But I started thinking about how often we had been talking at each other and not to each other. And so I started looking at different questions I could ask, maybe better questions that I could ask, that would allow me to be more responsible in my relationship. Like, what do you need from me right now? And instead of waiting for my response, or trying to fix him, or argue in my head about what he was saying. I just actively listened and allowed my beautiful partner to speak. And it really, truly was the turning point in how we listen to each other in our relationship. This crisis of connection impacts more than just our relationships. It impacts every aspect of our lives. Every day, we have the opportunity to be or become a DACL, a dedicated, active, and curious listener. Yes, my inner nerd created that. When we listen this way, we don't just hear words. We create a space for the unheard to begin to be heard, the unseen to begin to be seen, and the unhealed can begin to heal. At work, imagine a manager asking, instead of just giving instructions and directions for the day, asking an employee, tell me what's on your mind. Studies show that 46% of employees leave the workplace because they feel unheard, or with a friend, someone going through an end of a relationship or the loss of a loved one. Instead of us rushing in trying to fix their pain, which is so natural, what if we just held their hand and asked them, what's been the hardest part for you? That single moment of presence could be the lifeline they didn't even know they needed. And just yesterday morning, I used that very line with a good friend of mine in a conversation. Her father is facing prison, 82 years old, and it immediately brought her into a present moment where she started sobbing and just releasing all the energy of the possible loss. With strangers, even a kind word can make a difference. A brief conversation or an engaging conversation with a barista, a cab driver, an Uber driver, someone in customer service can become an anchor in their day. Studies show that up to 90% of chronic pain comes from stress. And it fuels things like migraines, back pain, fibromyalgia, by amplifying muscle tension, inflammation, and pain sensitivity. It wreaks havoc on the nervous system, which makes us even more sensitive to pain. The good news is that empathic listening can cut stress by 40%, proving that connection truly does heal. And with professionals, imagine a father being able to sit and speak openly without shame to a dedicated, active, and curious listener. What if that single conversation allowed him the space to heal and to rewrite his story or his legacy to one of compassion, curiosity, courage, and to one of love for his family? So you know how your partner can undress you with their eyes, or when you begin dating someone, you see them sizing you up, or they can undress you with their eyes. Imagine if we gave more permission to undress each other's souls. At holidays, instead of rehashing political differences, which is such an easy, normal conversation, what if someone leaned in and said, tell me why you think pineapple belongs on the pizza? Now that's a lot more sexy of a conversation than rehashing political differences, right? And what if this is why the chicken was crossing the road to find her DACL, a dedicated, curious, active, curious listener. When we listen with curiosity, we allow space for healing. Genuine connection reveals and heals. When we are able to sit with someone in their discomfort and listen, it allows space for healing. So my challenge to you today is to be or become the DACL that someone didn't even know they needed. Ask questions that matter. Ask different questions. Ask the challenging questions that no one wants to ask. And when the answers begin to come, my friend, listen. Listen fully and deeply, because that single moment of presence, that single conversation of listening, could be the lifeline or save someone when all hope has been lost or faded. We have 2 ears and one mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak, said Epictetus. So when we listen like this fully deeply, we're not just hearing the words or changing someone's day, we're actually unlocking their truth. And that truth ripples out into the world in ways that we cannot know. And I'm going to assert that now we do know why the chicken was crossing the street, to find her dackle, of course. Her very own dedicated, active, and curious listener. And who knows, right? That single conversation where we choose to sit and listen with someone could be that connection that they didn't even know they needed. And at the end of the day, isn't that what we are all looking for? A human, heartfelt connection. And the permission to be completely seen and loved and heard. Thank you.